The Senate is prepared to advance another plan to implement a flat income tax rate. Brandon Stick joining us tonight with a breakdown of the bill and its planned reductions. Brandon.
That's right, Rachel. The Kansas Senate is moving forward to push another bill that would implement a flat income tax rate to the Senate floor. It's after Governor Laura Kelly vetoed a tax plan backed by House Republicans. And the latest proposal is Senate Bill 539 that would implement a flat income tax rate. The bill seeks universal income tax rate of a 5.7% for 2024, followed by reductions of a small fraction of a percent every year for 6 years. This bill also packages the flat tax with other provisions similar to the bill Governor Kelly vetoed in January. Those include tax cuts for banks, Social Security, income, and state tax property for public schools. One Kansas representative spoke in favor of the bill today, saying that he feels the Senate is listening to the concerns surrounding previous bills.
Is a respect for some of the concerns and objections, specifically the concern about who receives the benefit. But if you take a look at the math on who really benefits, it is the low and middle income. They receive the majority of the tax break in this bill.
And again, the committee will be voting to push the bill to the Senate floor tomorrow, and we'll have how that vote turns out on 12 News.